Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So good evening to everyone in the online community. Good evening and good morning if you're in Canada. So there's a couple of questions here. Does trusting in awareness lead to stream entry? And if so, how? What is transcendental awareness? And is this the same awareness we are attuning to when we are knowing the knowing? So there's one of those words. We get them all the time, don't we? Stream entry. And that is the most loaded word in Theravada Buddhism, isn't it? So I don't like it. I basically don't use that word. I don't know. None of the monks use that word because it's so loaded. And when I find people showing off about stream entry, and I think, I don't know, but it is a word. So do I cop out and not talk about it? I would prefer not to. Um, but it is, I was doing that yesterday with Vipassana, wasn't I? And so etymology is the study of the origin of words. Entomology is a study of insects. So we're doing etymology, and words do change. So the meanings of words change culturally over time. But the important thing is that we have a common agreement on a word. That's what's really, if I'm going to communicate with you and you use the words sotapatti or stream entry, we might have a completely different sense of what that is, or not a clue of what that is usually. And then we can talk about it, but actually we're not communicating at all because we don't really have common language. So that in any kind of discourse around spiritual matters, you really have to check out where's this person coming at? Not coming at where, how does this person perceive, like the word God, say. That's used in so many different ways. So someone uses the word God. We don't believe in God. Sorry, we believe in anatta. You know, first of all, you have to ask, well, what do you mean by God? And then you have a dialogue, and if the person's interested. So this word, this loaded word, where should I go with it? We have a lot of jokes about stream entry. We make jokes like, "Have you got your boots on?" and things like that, which is not right. Um, how about let me start with, does trusting in awareness, well, what does that mean? What do I talk about trusting awareness? Where am I coming from with that? Well, one of the things my first teacher taught me, Venerable Botesiko, who was very good with the scriptures, was you want to get a whole idea of what this teaching is talking about. You don't want bits and pieces that don't fit together. So why anicca dukkha anatta? Why the five khandhas? Why paticca samuppada? Why Four Noble Truths? Why nibbana, the unconditioned? How do they all fit together? And that was my early study, trying to kind of and it was very confusing because these were to some extent, very difficult teachings and complex sometimes. And so it took me a while to make this whole teaching one piece, where all the bits fit together. So that you have to do on your own, because the way, obviously, I'm not an academic and I don't lay it out that way, but that's very good to consider. Um, the all the teaching must be pointing to the Buddha's enlightenment, seems to me. It's not like an abstract philosophy. The Buddha sits down and like Heidegger or someone like that makes as some kind of abstract philosophy. That wasn't his point. His point was he had realized something, he'd realized enlightenment, and now he's going to start to teach it. And so his whole point of it is pointing back to his own enlightenment, which is incredibly compassionate and hopeful. That he did say that we have a chance to understand this, and that's his great gift to us. So that for me is important, that the teaching must be something about his liberation and our possibility of liberation. So then his liberation is an experience. It's not a theory. He realizes something and he starts trying to figure out how to teach it. And so my liberation must be an experience. It can't be just a bunch of philosophical words that hang in air and have nothing to do with my experience. So then the teaching must point back to my experience. That seems pretty obvious. But when I get a word like stream entry, where's that in my experience? Or is it some other experience I have to get? And then someone tells me, well, no, you haven't got it. I, you know, so there was an interesting incident like that many years ago. A Farang monk, a Western monk, um, figured that he had attained Sotapatti. So he went to some of the Thai Kubajans and declared his attainment. And three of them said, no, you haven't. All three said, no. What do you mean, no? Um, which was interesting because he thought he had it. They thought he didn't. And that's the realm of I've got something, which I prefer Luangpor Cha's statement. Don't be a bodhisattva. Don't be a sotapatti. Don't be an arahant. Don't be anything or you'll suffer. I like that angle. But the reason I like this idea of trusting in awareness is because of the teaching on the khandhas. And the teaching on the khandhas is basically all our experiences through the senses, internal, external, sight, sounds, tastes, bodily feelings, emotions, memory, all that stuff which we experience as human beings, is that it is anicca dukkha anatta. And why is that important? Well, it's just saying that, like, if I were to speak like for like the Buddha might say, well, there is this realization possible of the unconditioned, but you won't find it over there in the khandhas. So don't look there. That's all. That's all. So then basically don't trust the khandhas. Don't trust in that which changes, because that which changes is maya. It's unreliable, which doesn't say it's bad. It doesn't just don't look for chickens where the geese are. This is a goose and you're looking for a chicken, that kind of thing. So if I'm interested now, I'm interested, this is a spiritual dimension I'm interested in. On a worldly level, I'm interested in efficiency, in competence, in aesthetics, in economics, all that. So in the worldly dhammas, I trust the architect, I trust the engineer, I trust Vibun when he's driving through Bangkok, and so on and so forth. So this kind of statement, trust and awareness, is really, and we're applying it to a kind of spiritual principle. Sure, you want to be aware when you're driving your car, but I also don't want this building that we're constructing to fall apart. So I trust in the engineer, I trust in the joiners, and so on. So it's not about the worldly dhammas. And we always refer back in Buddhism, we always have these two dimensions when we're talking about the teaching. One dimension is the normal realm of human endeavor, human relationships. And so we talk about right action, right speech, right livelihood. Dana, sila, uh, the skills of communication, the skills of entrepreneurship, the skills of cake baking. We have very good cakes here. Uh, the skills of organizing a ngan in nan, and so on and so forth. These are all the worldly skills, and they're very, very important. But that's not what a retreat is about. So we as human beings develop character, like you take on like this project was really difficult. So you need a lot of aditana barami, and you need to really like you take commitment, you take responsibility, and you have to follow it through all the hassles and difficulties. And that's a way of developing human character, and that's important. But here, so that the language of this is for me quite specific to the realization of deep peace that the Buddha offers us. So call it that. Unconditioned, uncreated, it sounds like it's kind of abstract again, but deep and profound peace, deep and profound, compassionate, liberating peace. Those are words maybe that are more approachable. And how to do that then? Well, Buddha tells us, well, don't do it by seeking an experience, because all experience, if it begins, it ends. So that's the kind of fundamental reason you say don't trust in experience, trust in awareness. In the worldly level, trust in the brakes of the car and trust in your whatever. But here now, if I want to discover deep peace and I go into that which is always unreliable, dependently originated, then I might get some fulfillment for a brief period of time, but because its nature is minor, it changes, I'm disappointed. So where are you looking for peace? And why we emphasize tanha, craving, is in the way we define craving now. Craving is that pursuit of experiences where we think we can be fulfilled. And Buddha is saying, you're looking in the wrong place. The Our ultimate desire is the end of desire, right? Our ultimate desire is the end of the desire. So when, like let's say I'm thirsty and I drink some water. What am I looking for? Am I really looking for water, or am I looking for the end of desire? So I drink the water. Oh, that's the end of desire. So was it when I'm looking for, when I feel discontent, I'm actually seeking, one way to look at it is seeking the end of desire. When I feel discomfort, I seek comfort. But what propels me is not so much the pursuit of comfort, it's to get rid of the discomfort. Okay? So where is there a way of finding a deep comfort or a deep peace as through experiences? Well, no, because experiences are minor, they're uncertain. So where we can see that is like in say in meditation sometimes. You'll have discomfort, not abject pain, not like severe pain. You'll feel discomfort, and through experience and mindfulness, you'll just hang in with the discomfort. You'll see the desire to move, and you won't move, not from willpower, just from wisdom. And and you sit through, and the discomfort ceases, and you're peaceful. Now you've realized that peace not by seeking a different kind of experience, but by seeing the cessation of wanting. And that's a small experience I think most of us get in meditation. And that's a taste of what we mean by the peace which comes from the cessation of desire. So if I trust in awareness, then what happens? Desire rises in the mind. Now, if it's a biological desire, I follow it. I'm thirsty, I drink. I'm feeling hot and sweaty, I have a shower. Nothing wrong with that. I have a stone in my shoe, I take it out. I slip on a tile and I go to the hospital. or whatever. So that's biological desire, which is all very, very well and good. But in our own conditioning, there's a lot of sense of becoming and being a person and succeeding and owning, and there's so many different areas that are not biological. They're cultural. They're just our greed, wanting more things, to own things, wanting power over people, and so many other things. And those pathways of greed, hatred, and delusion won't work. They won't bring us deep peace. But if we can witness them and trust in awareness and witness greed as an object, and then the greed starts to cease, we realize the peace which is not dependent on the object of greed. Yeah. So the let's say I'm sorry, but I always have to go back to fear. Just it's such a good example, and I'm only one guy, right? But so again, the discomfort I felt with the arising of fear was profound. Like giving talks, I'd go to the toilet 5, 6 times. I was really afraid. Embarrassed, I'm Ajanamaro, no. Ajanjaya no. But so that was the kanda that arose. That was the experience that arose. Now, my desire mind said, don't give talks. I mean, it said it seriously. Do not give talks. This is suicide. Don't do it. But my Ajahn said, give talks, because you have to start to look at fear and social anxiety. No, I want to do walking meditation. I want to do samatha. You know, I want to get samadhi. No, 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 no. Get out there. And so what was going on? The experience I had was unpleasant, severely unpleasant. And the desire was to have the pleasant. And my teacher said, as long as you run away from fear, you'll always be running away from fear. You'll never be free. We all know that, don't we? So then renunciation became trusting in awareness rather than trusting in desire. When I trusted in desire, what would I do? I'd rehearse the talk. So that was my first strategy. Write out the talk, rehearse it, get it all down, this is going to be brilliant. This is going to be fantastic talk. Then my mind would go blank. I'd forget what I'd written down. But that was avoiding the fear, wasn't it? No, no, no. You just have to welcome the fear. Oh, okay, all right. So that the struggle was the experience and the desire around the experience. And it wasn't just an academic exercise, it was an existential exercise. It was about my existence and my suffering. And and it was such a fantastic teaching. So what what comes about from that is the discomfort of fear becomes acceptable, and the desire to get rid of it is noticed as an object rather than be the subject. And as those two happen, then the repression or denial of the fear no longer fools me. I say, I know, no, 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 I'm going to stay with this. And then because I stay with it, then the fear itself, because it's an object, I don't feed it, the fear ceases in the mind. And so there's the freedom from fear. And it's profoundly beautiful for me because that was a big part of my kilesa structure, or the karma of my mind. So back to Sotapatti. I am coming back to that. So if you take Sotapatti or stream entry as an experience you're going to get if you conceive it that way. The problem you have is then you are now involved in becoming. Now, there might be an experience like that, but if you're setting up your mind, I'm going to get this experience, aren't you looking for an object called stream entry, even though you don't know what it is? Aren't you kind of seeking to find something? I certainly had that. But if I'm still seeking to try to get something, if it's not here and now, then even if I get something, it's going to change. It's a anicca dukkha anatta. So the whole sense of seeking something in the future to me doesn't makes no sense. Although I certainly got fooled by it. I meet people who come to me, usually they're Sri Lankan, and they say to me, "Oh, Bhante, I just like to get Sotapatti this lifetime and not have to come back." Okay, you know, that's pretty nihilistic. And I want to get Sota, and who is it that wants? And what happened to Anatta? And who dies anyway? You know, it's a complex equation. So there's an idea, a cultural idea, and that's Sila Bhatta Paramasa. This cultural idea that, oh God, I don't want to come back and be a teenager. No, please don't inflict that on me. And then I'm going to get this thing. And that's Sakaya personality view, it's Attavada, it's Bhava Tanha, it's that whole 9 yards of suffering. But if you look at Sotapatti maybe in a different way, or rather than an experience that you're going to get, rather let's say if there's the absence of something in your perception of reality, if there's an absence of taking it personally. Luangpor Viradhammo has that fabulous book, Don't Take Your Life Personally. That's such a good title. Don't take your life personally. Don't take don't take this fear personally. That is what I think Sotapatti's pointing to. It's pointing to the absence of, shall we say, ego perception around the khandhas. So the classical way we talk about that is Sakaya Ditti, Silabhutta Paramasa, and Vichikicha, when those three things are absent. And I don't want to get too academic about it because we can get lost. But just basically, the fear comes, sorry, I have to use that example. It's the only one I've got. Fear comes into consciousness. It is an object conditioned by other conditions. But what it triggers is thought. And that thought is, I can't do this. I can't, I don't want to do this. It's not fair. Or maybe if I say this, it triggers thinking. And the thinking is loaded with Sakaya Ditti or Attavada, with me and mine. When I see that that thinking process is an object, and the whole sense of me being a person with a problem is an object, then my perception is no longer loaded by delusion. It just sees, oh, fear and I thinking are an object, and there is the knowing. Now, if I trust in the knowing and I don't buy into the thinking about the fear, I know fear is fear. And then I see maybe the desire to get rid of the fear. I know that too. Now, and these are the next two fetters in this sequence around Sotapatti. The next two are, we say, the attenuation of greed, hatred, and fear. Attenuation is usually defined as diminishing of. So the next stage, in which we usually don't talk about, is that greed, hatred, and delusion will start to diminish when they are known as objects, when they're not believed in as a subject. And that's what I found. When my attention to life was from the perspective of not self, this is not me, not mine. This is karma, which is coming through consciousness. It's just the way it is. When it was known like that, then the fear got less because there was no upadana. There is no attachment. There is no belief in it. There is no feeling of it. And and that was facilitated because now the perspective was, I would say, right view, right understanding. Now that to me is a possibility that isn't so much an experience that you get, it's something, it's more like something drops away and you see things in a particular way, right understanding. And so if I were to say, well, it's just like it's permanent state, right? Sotapatti, and then, oh, great, only 7 times left, or 6.5 at max, or whatever you want. It's still Attavada. It's still a me going through. Oh, you could say, oh, 7 more. I think I'll go for the next one. I only want one more. No, it's all kind of wrong thinking. No, I don't want any more. I just want to finish it all. I'll be an Arahant. Thank you very much. But how does it actually work in reality is let's say, uh, you say something inappropriate to someone in a cruel way, let's say, someone you love, and you just lose, you lose it with speech, and you say, you idiot, you don't know anything. And then you walk away, and then you feel the regret, and the remorse, and it's very, very painful. What happens? You usually go into Sakayaditi or Attavada. I'm terrible, I'm terrible, I'm a horrible person, bad monk, whatever you want. And that is wrong view. Now, the resultant remorse is telling you, be careful, don't hurt people. Okay, I try to be a better person. But the whole thinking of, I'm a terrible person, that is wrong view. Stream entry would suggest that this feeling of remorse is telling me something, yeah, but it's the causally connected to the anger, to the hurtfulness, to the alienation. And this is the result. It's like this, dependent origination. Now, if I witness the feeling of regret and remorse, then I'm seeing it as anatta. If I buy into the thinking process, bad monk, bad monk, bad monk, what does that do? That creates more dosa in the mind, more aversion. So the mind will do that again. It'll lose it with a person, and then I'll hate myself again. And the whole cycle of samsara goes on and on and on. And what's fueling that is thought, and then action, thought, and action. But if in the moment of inappropriate, whatever, I can apologize, which is true, that's good to do. But then I say, oh, this is the result. With this, there is that. With this as condition, there is this result, dependent origination. So that's what Buddhism uses instead of atta. People ask, well, what's going on? You say it's anatta. Well, something's going on. Well, we say it's dependent origination. With this as condition that arises. And all of that's trying to get us to a kind of witnessing posture where we trust in awareness. So if I trust in awareness, even though I lost the plot there, I got caught in my angers and resentments, at some point, oh, this is the result. And if I do that, then mindfulness becomes stronger and stronger, and the tendency to get caught in all these things gets less and less and less. Trust in awareness. So maybe the next time I do it again, right? But now I've kind of picked that up. Now, maybe I'm more mindful as I'm about to do it, but maybe I'm not. Say the wrong thing again. But now I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to welcome this feeling of remorse and regret. I said this the other night, I think. It's not a nice feeling. When you've hurt someone that you love, not, it's one of the worst feelings you can have, I think. Yeah? So consider what desire is doing. Desire is then going to try to avoid that. And how will it do it? It'll do it by hating yourself. It's it's perverse, but it's much nicer hating yourself than feeling the feeling of having hurt someone. But my experience, if I just stay with the heart, This is the result, Viradhammo. This is the result. That's what it feels like. Stay with the result. It takes me to a place of responsibility and actually love. And I mentioned this earlier, but in this context, then the tendency to hurt people gets less because now I've really felt the result of hurtful speech, and awareness is stronger around that tendency because no one wants to suffer. I don't want to suffer. You don't want to suffer. And so the awareness is stronger because the painful result is going to take place if there's heedlessness. So the same scenario arises tatayampi, third time, or hundredth time. And now maybe there's the tendency to get lost in the anger again, but now there's more mindfulness, and the consequence of that becomes much more apparent, and there's more restraint, more natural restraint. Not because of a sense of self-hatred, but because of consequences with this. And so now I'll trust in awareness rather than trusting in my emotion. And as I trust in awareness, that emotion loses less and less power. And I trust in awareness, and I trust in awareness, and I trust in awareness. And I see that that's where the peace lies, trusting in that. And from that, the the heart chakras, the Brahma Viharas start to function more and more clearly. And quite often, yes, so for me, with this boring talk about fear, the way I covered up the fear was through a certain cynicism. So I could be very cynical and arrogant in my cynicism. So not only is there the fear, there's the personality compounded to avoid the fear. So how do I survive in a world? Well, I'll just be clever, but not really clever, not really compassionate clever. So another kind of layer of complexity. So then as I worked on the fear, I said, "Whoa, where's all this cynicism coming from? And all this judgment? Oh, and oh, I see that's covering that up, and oh, trust and awareness." So the whole sense of the negative part of the personality built on fear and desire falls away, falls away, falls away. And then the personality can function from the Brahma Viharas. It still can be uh, good qualities functioning, but they're no longer from fear and desire, fear and desire. So that's a process I've gone through, and hence I tend to use language like trust and awareness. And does awareness lead to stream entry? Maybe awareness is stream entry. I don't know. Now, I'm not giving you a canonical. Well, I think the three fetters, that's canonical. The Sukhayaditi, Silabhataparsa, and Vichikicha, and then the next, the attenuation of greed and hatred, that you'll find, I think, in the canon. Um, the main thing is it's not something you become. And so I always go back to what is the part of the teaching which is letting go, ceasing. Right? So personality view, if I let go of that, well, pain is this way. It feels this way. So then the second part of the question, you got time? Uh, what, what is transcendental awareness? And is this the same awareness we are attuning to when we are knowing the knowing? Yeah, I would say, well, can you have two awarenesses, first of all? Couldn't be possible. Because if you have two awarenesses, you have to have a third awareness to be aware that there's two awarenesses, correct? Because you'd have to see a difference. At some point, you just got to stop, and that's consciousness. Yeah, you can like if I say there are two awarenesses, what knows that there's awareness A and awareness B? So, so that's consciousness, say, or knowing, or puru. And when now this transcendental awareness, that's probably come up. I don't know where that comes from, but what it's pointing to is Again, the sense that you won't find the unconditioned in the conditioned. You won't find the peace of nibbana in the movement of the khandhas. So awareness, because it's not an object, it's not dependent on sense experience, it transcends change. It's not a function of change. Awareness just is. Consciousness just is. And so when Luangpor Dun says, no, the mind is the mind knowing the mind, I don't know if you get that, or this is in awareness, if that makes sense to you, but that I think what that's pointing to. And then you go back to the same idea of trusting in awareness. So that's the way I handle all of that. And for me, then everything is a piece. I can see how dependent origination fits in there, how the language of the unconditioned, the uncreated, the unoriginated fits in there, why we talk about uh, the abandonment of tanha, because tanha is always going out to conditions. It's a piece. It all fits together. Now, if I come across a teaching in mystic Hinduism or mystic Christianity or in Mahayana Buddhism or whatever that challenges that piece, and I can't fit it in there, and I really enjoy that. So when Mahayana says, or I think it's only the Tibetans probably say, that an enlightened being can get reborn, I'm stumped. I don't know. I can't figure that one out. But that's not my job. That's just not my job. So I say, Mairu. So there's some things I just don't know. And I don't have to know. I don't have to know everything. I don't have to have every answer. But if someone said something like, you can find a permanent experience, then I would say, really? And then I would challenge them or dialogue them. And I'd say, well, if it began, wouldn't it end? And if it's not here now, then isn't it something that is born and dies? That's the way I would dialogue that. So the word akaliko is very important to me, not a matter of time. Tanha is kala, isn't it? It's like seeking something, getting rid of something. Whereas awareness is not trying to go anywhere. Right? It's not trying to go anywhere. It just is. Whew. I think that's sufficient. Let me see. Oh, here's a short one because otherwise I'll. How would you advise to talk or console someone who is considering mercy killing? So, is that a thing in Thailand? Like we have in Canada, we've introduced medical assisted dying. Do you have that as a legal option? Okay, we have that in Canada. So a person, if they have a terminal illness, they can go to the doctors, and if it's a terminal illness and they have excruciating pain or whatever, and there's no hope of cure, then at a certain point in that illness, they can seek medically assisted dying. And so I was a part of that with 3 people in the last few months. And it's very strange. I mean, I can't advise, otherwise I'd have to disrobe. But these people had made the choice. And one gentleman, he had horrible, horrible cancer. And he went through the chemo and he went through horrible stuff. And then he got it again. He was on heavy, heavy narcotics. And they got permission to do that. And then one day he did that. So he probably shortened his life by a few weeks. Um, and he had a party beforehand. He was walking around with his IV hydromorphone drip and very, very thin, but very quite happy guy. And then 2 days later, his wife phoned me. They did it. So this is a thing now. So I suppose this question is kind of coming from there. She is doing it to stop pain and because of financial reasons. Well, I wouldn't make the decision for anyone, first of all. Um, I would I would really inquire why the person wants to do this. Uh, I would suggest, can you just be aware of it? Can you just kind of follow the process of dying naturally? Why don't you want to do this? Why do you want to shortcut this? Um, so that I'd make sure that the person isn't just wanting self-annihilation, that kind of a thing. But I would never, I think these difficult kind of questions, you have to be very compassionate to the person and not just come from dogma and listen a lot and not necessarily say anything. But if you can get, if you can get the person, stop fidgeting, Viradhammo. If you, if you can get the person to question their own decisions and throw doubt in there or whatever, then they have to make their own decision. So I don't know if this person is going to go to Switzerland or somewhere like that. Maybe that's it. They have the Dignitas protocols. We have that. But as a monk, obviously, if I said go for it and the person did it, I'd have to disrobe. In fact, I would no longer be a monk. So I just cannot get involved in that. But the person having made the decision, well, then I talk to them and with them. So that happened with 3 people. It's still a kind of, I don't know quite what to think about it. So I think that's sufficient for today.